Hello everyone, I am Chase at Rocky Mountain ATVMC, and this is our overview of the CRF 125F. Alright, so we all know that Honda has some really good kids bikes in their lineup, bikes that are comfortable, easy to ride, great for riders that are learning, but also the CRF 125F that we're going to talk about today, really popular bike for even adults. I know a lot of people that like these to have them for pit bikes, you know, if you're just out camping, you want a little bike to cruise around on, so just a really fun play bike. So today in this video, we're going to talk about the 125F, we're going to talk about the specs of it, we're going to talk about the size to help you know what size rider this bike would be great for. We're also just going to give you some tips and tricks to help you know how to get the most out of these smaller bikes. But also keep in mind that this is part of a series. We're doing these same overviews on a lot of other kids' bikes and smaller bikes that are out there. Again, just to help you know what bike size-wise is going to be good for the rider that you're shopping for, and tips and tricks on those bikes as well to help you get the most out of those. So make sure you're watching those as well. But today we're focusing on the CRF 125F. So to get started, let's give a little bit of background history on this bike. So in 2014, Honda stopped making the 80F and also the CRF 100F to make room for the 125. Now they have this in a standard version, that's what I have right here in front of me. They do also make this in a big wheeled version as well. Now the standard version has a 17-inch front rim and then a 14-inch rear. The big wheel has a 19-inch front and a 16-inch rear. MSRP for new, the standard version, you're gonna be about $2,900. If you go up to the big wheel, you're about $3,300. But if you look around, you can actually find these used for a pretty good deal. So when it comes to the engine, you're 124 cc's, it's a dual valve engine, you're air cooled, carbureted. These things are just proven reliable. They just tend to go forever. And what's great too is very smooth power. So for beginning riders who are just getting on a bike for the first time, it's not gonna be overly powerful, but you're still gonna have plenty of power for riders that say a little bit more advanced who are transitioning into a bigger bike. So the clutch on these, very smooth. It's a 4-speed manual clutch. In fact, that's one thing that a lot of riders talk about, or if you read on forums, a lot of people talk about how smooth and easy the clutch is to work. And when it comes to the gearing, first gear is really low. So it's great for beginner riders, also great for trails or technical riding. And they also say that it's almost stall proof. So you can go really slow when you're rolling on the throttle and you don't really have to worry about killing this too much. So it makes it a good transition bike from say PW80 or something where it's gonna have more of an auto clutch, and then until you get to your full manual clutch. So a great transition bike. Some other great features about this, fuel capacity, you're 1.1 gallons, and then you're gonna have 0.2 gallons on reserve. Keyed ignition, so if you wanna take the key out so Junior or the little missus can't take the bike while you're away, you can just take the key right out. You're also gonna have electric start with a kickstart backup. Electric start works awesome, these things fire right up. Also, if you do have to use a Kickstarter, it doesn't take usually more than a couple kicks to fire right up. And then suspension, okay, these are pretty soft. It's a smaller bike meant for lighter riders, but it's gonna be more set up for trails. They can handle, you know, smaller jumps. What's great though, is that when they came out with these, they did update the forks and the shock from the previous 100 and also that 80F. So better suspension than what was on the smaller bikes previously. All right, so now let's talk about size, because probably the most important thing to consider when you're picking up a smaller bike is how tall is the bike, also what size rider is gonna be ideal for it. So the standard model of the 125F is 28.9 inches tall. So that's from the ground to the top of the seat. The big wheel version is 2 inches taller at 30.9 inches. And I know a lot of people are gonna be comparing this to the Yamaha TTR 125. So to give you that comparison, the standard version is about 2 inches shorter than the Yamaha TTR 125. The big wheel version is actually about a ½ inch taller than the Yamaha, but you also got to remember that Yamaha does make a big wheel version of their 125, which is going to be taller than the big wheel version of the 125F. Now, if you are comparing it to other bikes in Honda's lineup, it's about 2.5 inches taller than the CRF 110F, and then if you go look at the 150F, which would be the next step up, you're actually going to be about 4 inches shorter than that. So depending on the size of your child or whoever it is you might be shopping for, this bike in general terms is going to be great for about 14 years or younger and then up to about 5 feet tall. But to give you just a better idea, we're actually going to bring in a couple kids right now of different heights, different ages, and that's just going to give you a really good comparison. All right, so now I've got a couple youth riders in here that are going to help me out. I've got Kendall and Katie. So you can see different ages, different heights. So we're going to bring each one around, put them on the bike to give you a good comparison. So first, Kendall, come on around here. So Kendall, she's 11 years old and she's 4'8". So hop on there, Kendall. So if I tilt the bike straight up and down and we look at Kendall here, at 4'8", her feet are about 2-3 inches off the ground still. So at 11 years old and her height, I'd say she's a little bit too short for this bike, so you'd want to give her a couple more years to grow into it. Okay, perfect, Kendall. Now, if we have Katie come on around for me. Now, Katie, she is 13 years old and she's 5 feet 1 inches tall. Katie, hop on there for me. Perfect. So you can see with Katie at 5 feet 1 inches tall, you can see both feet are touching the ground comfortably. I wouldn't say she's too tall for this bike by any means. And again, she's 13 years old. So again, about that 14 and under age range or around 5 feet tall, you can see she's a great fit. So if you were shopping and you had a rider of this size, I would say this is a perfect fit for this bike. Thank you, Katie. All right, so those are our youth riders. And again, you've got Kendall, 4'8", 11 years old. She's a little bit too short. And then you've got Katie at 5 feet 1, 13 years old. And she, I say, is a perfect match for this bike. All right, so now that you've had a good comparison and kind of seen what size rider is going to be great for these bikes, now we're just going to give you some tips and tricks to help you get the most out of them. So first we'll talk about gearing. So the gearing on these is pretty low. On the standard model, you're a 13 tooth sprocket in the front, and then you're a 46 tooth in the rear. And the big wheel, you've got a 13 in the front and then a 49 in the rear. But with the big wheel, if you want to, you could gear it up, go to a taller gear, and go down to a 46 tooth in the rear. And that way you're going to get a little bit more top end speed. Just remember, if you do that, you are going to have to change the length of your chain. So after gearing, let's talk about the engine a little bit. So these bikes have plenty of bottom end power, plenty of torque, but if you want to open up the top end a little bit, you can go with an aftermarket pipe. So that's what we've done. We've got the FMF Power Core 4 on here. We did go with the spark arrested version. So if you want to do some trail riding, riding areas that you need to be, United States Forest Service approved, they do make the spark arrested version, which is nice. The carburetor. So these bikes out of the factory are jetted pretty dang lean. So what that means is that they can have a hard time starting when they're cold, and it takes them a pretty long time to warm up. So what we did is we put our Tusk cold start jet kit in. So we just changed the size of the pilot in the main jet, and that just helps them start easier, helps them warm up quicker. So overall, it just makes the bike run better. From there, shift lever. So with these, the stock shift lever is not folding. So if Junior has a crash or a tip over, they do bend pretty easy. So we've got our Tusk shifting or folding shift lever on there. Now at the front of the bike, the stock handlebars are made from steel. Okay, it's nice because they're inexpensive, but steel bars do bend pretty easily, so we upgraded those. So we've got some 7/8 SE Pro Taper handlebars on here. We also got a taller rise version. The stock bars are pretty low, so it can be uncomfortable for taller riders. And also just having aluminum handlebars on there. These are much stronger, not nearly as likely to bend if you have that crash or a tip over. We've also got some new Pro Taper grips. Okay, your clutch and your brake lever, those are both going to be Tusk as well. We always recommend, especially for the smaller bikes, just pick up a couple. They're real inexpensive, and so if you do break one, you have another right there to replace it. We've got some Achery's handguards on there. Now down at the bottom, this is really important, okay? We have a skid plate from Ricochet. So the standard model of this bike is only 8.5 inches off the ground, and then the big wheel is 10.4, so they sit pretty low. So if you're doing some trail riding, it's pretty easy to make contact with rocks or with logs, so it's really important to get some protection underneath there. And then from there, we just kind of, put the final touches on the bike. So we updated the seat cover. We got our TAC graphics seat cover on here. We did the Tusk gas cap. These things look really cool. Full graphics kit. So we have these available so you can pick out your kit. You've got lots of colorways to choose from. You can even customize it with the rider's name and also their number. And then really just to cap it all off, we got some Tusk bling parts on here, and we put new tires. We've got some Bridgestone tires on here. Tires are something that we think is really important for these smaller bikes, especially for a newer beginner rider. Having more grip is going to make them more feel confident. They're less likely to break loose or lose traction if they're learning to turn, things like that. So really important, just get some new tires on there. All right, so there it is. That is our overview of the Honda CRF 125F. You guys make sure to comment below if you have any questions, or if you have any tips or tricks that you have about this bike specifically, make sure you write those below. Now to pick up all the parts that we talked about for this bike, or even OEM parts, click on the link or head over to RockyMountainATVMC.com. And do not forget the orders over $75 ship free. And remember, this is a guide series where we've already done some other smaller bikes. We're going to be doing more in the future, so to not miss out on those, well, make sure you click and subscribe. I'm Chaser Rocky Mountain, and we'll see you on the trails.